All right, we're recording. Victoria, if you want to get Facebook up, we're going to get started in 2 minutes. I'm okay if we stream a little early. I'm recording a little early as well.
Okay, I'll get it set up.
And if you haven't already, type your name into the chat box. If there's any discrepancy with your login or sign in, this is your saving grace. We can look at the back end of Zoom, but we also want your name in the chat box. I see a lot of you have already. And if you're attending in a group, just make sure everybody is signed in. Thank you. Got 1 minute. All right, it's now 6 p.m. Welcome, everyone. If you haven't already, put your name in the chat box for attendance verification. Be sure you are on mute. You are more than welcome to take yourself, put yourself on camera, I should say. You're welcome to do that. This is going to be a participatory webinar. We're going to be talking tonight about leading from the middle. You know, why your middle managers are so very important. So supervisors, field training officers, operations managers. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's something that I think a lot of us could use some self-reflection or mentorship in. And I think we're going to deliver some great content tonight. Aarron Reinert is joining us. So before I turn the floor over to Aarron to give a brief introduction and take over, a few announcements. So our next webinar is scheduled for April 28th. It is called After the Call, Story and Turning Points. I have a really exciting panel. It is a group of us that actually grew up at the same agency. We all know each other very well. We're going to be sharing some turning point stories. The webinar is around mental health and well-being, and it will be a panelist webinar. It'll be different than anything you've experienced, so check that out. Feel free to register for that. CEs are offered. We also have our last series for March on March 30th for simulated virtual EMS continuing education training. That is open for registration. You can also find that on our website. I sent that also to you in an email. There's a link in your email you can connect to if you don't know how to get to our website. And then some exciting things are going to be happening this year for workshops. Obviously, with everyone kind of seeing what is going to happen with our pandemic, we have been too. But we've been doing some back-end work. And as long as all goes well, we have some workshops coming up. We're going to be doing another CADS workshop with PWW. We're going to be offering a 12-lead ECG course with Bob Page. And we are also going to be putting on a rural EMS QA and data workshop that's going to be an entire day long. I will be releasing the dates and registration very soon. Again, we're just waiting like everyone else. So those are my announcements. Aarron, are you set to go?
Absolutely.
Hi.
Hello.
So Aarron, please, I don't want to, I don't know if I could do it justice. We have some new people on tonight. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, that would be super.
Be happy to. And Andrea, thanks for the opportunity to be on tonight. It's quite an honor. And I see some names that I recognize. And for those that I don't, welcome and greetings. My name is Aarron Reinert. I'm honored to be a paramedic for the last 30 years and been in EMS for 33 as a volunteer EMT and then a volunteer EMT intermediate and then a paramedic for 30 of those years and have the opportunity to play a couple different roles in EMS, one of which is to do this kind of thing as one of the two partners in SafeTech Solutions, and have had a long-lasting relationship with Michigan and the Center for Rural Health, and have done assessments in our leadership academy and some technical assistance, and do that kind of work not only in Michigan, but all across the nation. And are really honored right now to be conducting really a first of its kind assessment of the entire state of EMS in the state of Alaska. So quite a fun project, and one that will likely be ongoing. I also have the privilege of running an ambulance service that serves the rural parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin. We do about 10,000 calls a year over the two states with 5 locations over 1,000 square miles. And then on behalf of our industry, get the privilege to work with members of Congress and our federal agencies on EMS issues through the American Ambulance Association and other groups, and recently was the president for the American Ambulance Association. But I come to you tonight, like many of you, who myself have had a journey of leading from the middle. Today, I may hold an executive rank, but I certainly spent my time as a supervisor or as a manager or as a field training officer. So when we say leading from the middle, we mean all of those titles. We mean they're not the executive, but they're not the frontline individuals. So as Andrea and I spent some time talking about this topic, we really came back to, of all of the many facets of leading from the middle, to one that we thought deserved some time and your attention tonight, which is really about influence. If I don't always have the title and I don't always have the rank, how do I indeed influence people below me, beside me, and above me? And so, Andrea, I'm curious, as you've journeyed through many different roles in EMS and outside of EMS, why is this important? Why don't we simply use our titles, our positions, our rank to get stuff done? And let me pause for a moment. I don't mean in the negative way, right? I don't mean hitting people with the stick to get them to do things. I don't mean beating a mule. I mean simply saying, hey, because I have a certain color brass, or I have a certain color helmet, or certain things behind my name, why wouldn't I just use those things to get stuff done? So what do you think, Andrea?
Well, I think you kind of already alluded to this. I mean, you could, right? You could just use your title as a kind of backbone to get things done or to force things to get done. Mm-hmm. But I think influence is something that some of us learn early in our career. If we're surrounded by great people and great mentors that teach us, you know, what it truly means to be influential, mm-hmm. and others such as myself, it's been a journey, and it took getting to know what influence was really truly about and spending the time learning about influence. So, and you're going to dive into this, you know, it's about investing, it's about trust building, it's about all of those things that you have outlined in the diagram that I thought was going to come up sooner. There it is.
Oh, there it was.
So I really like this diagram, and we can talk obviously more about this, but the investment piece for me is really important because, and I've told you this just in discussing some of this information and this topic, is who's going to go first? How are you going to invest? How do you invest? What type of leadership style do you have? And do you know yourself well enough? All of those things come into play. So, you know, title alone, rank alone is just not going to do it. And I think for some of us, you know, we get placed into those positions because we're next in line and we don't realize there's so much more behind it.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a few ideas that I certainly have that have come hard fought, as they would say, from making the mistakes, from doing it the wrong ways and learning that it's not effective and why it's not effective. But I would appreciate all of you that are part of our conversation tonight, jump in. Please use the chat box. Why do you think, from your perspective, your experiences, your lessons learned, why don't we simply use rank, title? Why don't we use authority as a way to get things done? And so what I would share with you is a couple things. First is it doesn't stick. So if Andrea is one of the paramedics that works on my shift and I need her to do something and I say, Andrea, do this, and whether I say it out loud or it's assumed, there's the next part of or else, she'll comply because she has to, or because she wants her job, or because I offered her $5 to do it, or something like that, but it won't stick. If I want her to do that thing again, I need to threaten her again, or I need to give her $5 again, or something like that. It doesn't stick. One of the other reasons why we want to think about influence differently is we often are trying to influence people who have authority over us. Our boss, our boss's boss, maybe a peer. So we don't have authority over them. Maybe I'm in operations and I want to influence clinical. Maybe I want to influence somebody at the state EMS office or at the Office of Rural Health or in my church group or in my family. I've learned, and my wife continues to remind me, I don't have authority over my family. So when I try to tell my brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws and things like that to do things, they smile and they grin. And I'm sure they're thinking some things that I won't say on a recorded live streaming webinar. So how do I influence those people that I don't have authority over? So it doesn't stick and I don't always have authority. So wanted to catch a couple things that people said. So Amy said, because I want them to want to do it because it's the right thing. So yeah, that's that sticky part. If I use real influence, they'll do it because they want to. They believe in it. They understand it. They connect the dots. Alex says, lead by example and do not delegate anything that you wouldn't do yourself. I so agree. But I want to add a little side note to that. So often folks in the middle, leading from the middle, will often say what Alex says. And I agree, because the reverse of that is I just give everybody the poop jobs that I won't do. And of course, that's just horrible, right? When I'm above shoveling or going and cleaning that plugged toilet or washing that truck or cleaning out after a tough call when the crew just needs a few minutes. Well, I'm above having to do those things. But I know Alex isn't suggesting this, but on behalf of the whole group, sometimes we will say, well, I'm doing that task because, I wouldn't ask anybody to do something I wouldn't do myself. Sometimes that's because we don't have the courage to go ask somebody else to do it. So imagine I'm the supervisor and I go look at the crew's truck and it's just a mess and they haven't been doing anything all day long. And so I had a soup tell me in my own organization that says, oh, so what I do is I just try to get them to kind of see it. So I'll go out and I'll start washing the truck with the scrub brush and, wiping it down. And my hope is they'll see me out doing it, kind of feel a little guilty, and they'll come out and wash. Oh, great. How's that working for you? Oh, it's not working. Huh. I says, why don't you just go tell them to wash the truck? Maybe because then they won't like me. So I think Alex's point is spot on, which is if we think we're above people, they're not going to follow us and we won't influence them. Becky says there needs to be some sort of buy-in. Yeah, I love these words, buy-in, lead by example, do the right thing for the employee to take ownership. What a great word, ownership. Sarah says you have to give respect to earn respect. You bet. And I think that's really the heart of this. I'd never ask somebody to do something I won't do, because I have that respect of them, that I respect that their role and responsibility, while maybe different than mine, is as important as mine, whether they're the VST, the CEO, or everywhere in between. Selik, I think if I said that right, I think maybe we could have you mute your mic if you wouldn't mind.
I'm looking.
Thanks. And Marv says there's no buy-in from the troops if they don't see the boss engaging with them. Yeah, it's always working together as a team if they feel like I'm just dumping. So, Andrea.
So I'm dying to jump in here. The other thing that's missing for me in this equation is just communicating your why. You know, if you have to delegate, which, you know, if you don't delegate sometimes, especially as like an ops or middle manager, if you don't delegate anything, you're going to run yourself ragged, right? But if you do have to delegate something, communicate why, and also just being really transparent. Like, thank you so much. This helps me out greatly. This is why I'm delegating it. I think remedies a lot of that as well when we ask people to do things and want to engage them.
Yeah, completely agree. Influence has all of these components, and I so appreciate people sharing them. It's about explaining the why. It's getting buy-in. It's getting ownership. It's showing respect, all of those particular pieces. And at the end of the day, those things are sticky. We believe in our brain, there's three, both physiological and anatomical regions. The first is this bump in the front, our foreheads, our prefrontal cortex, and analytic and reasoning lives here. Charts, graphs, spreadsheets, pivot tables, those kinds of things. But the vast majority of our brain is the emotional center, the limbic system. And its very core is where emotion lives, and often the strongest emotion being fear. And so when I show somebody a spreadsheet, yes, there is probably some population that will go, oh, there it is. I see it in the numbers, but not most people. I mean, we didn't cry when Old Yeller got it because of some analytic and reasoning. We might have teared up a little bit because of the emotion, even though it was a movie. So all of this influence is part of the slide that you see, which is what I would suggest, what we would suggest is important conversations. And we believe there's 10 of them. And tonight we don't have the time to go through them in detail. If it piques your interest and you want to know more, let us know. Happy to talk about them. Happy maybe as future opportunities present to talk about some of them. But know this part about the slide. The things over on the left-hand side that hopefully should happen quite frequently, but shouldn't feel intense at all, are about influence. When I simply connect with people without an agenda, when I'm clear about expectations, when I have great encouraging conversations and I tell wonderful stories that are the foundation of the why versus the what and the how of things. And when I do those things and I do them well, it often results in influence. But there's also other conversations that we have to have. And when we do, it may feel more intense, and hopefully we don't do them as often, like having an accountability conversation with someone, having a mentoring conversation, which often involves sharing some kind truths, and talking about a tough call, doing some coaching, and maybe having to conduct an investigation. And you notice off to the right, we have discipline. It's not a conversation. Those that have been through the Leadership Academy will know that it is not meant to be a conversation. We've done the conversation leading up to a discipline. So I just want to encourage that if we're going to be influential with others, it doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen just once. So it's part of this broader scheme of the 10 essential conversations. But let's imagine you've said, I'm ready to work on my influence. I'm ready to figure out how to influence someone else about something. Maybe it's this schedule that I think is important that we implement. Maybe I don't like the new truck design and I would like to offer some opinions. Maybe I'm struggling with an action and behavior of someone else. So before we dive into this slide, I thought, Andrea, we would just show them. I thought maybe if we modeled it, they would really get it. And then we'll use the slides to kind of unpack it. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. That sounds like a good idea.
Awesome. And would you mind, Andrea, could you kind of like be the boss and I'll be the employee? And there's something that I want to talk to you about. And the thing I want to talk to you, her about, want to influence her over, is long distance transfers. I know IFTs are something that often we're struggling with. It's part of this necessary evil, but yet it often comes in conflict with 911 and crews and shift lengths and all of those kinds of things. So it's often a controversial, passionate item in our organization. So Andrea is my boss. I'm the supervisor for our organization, and I want to influence her about transfers. Sound okay, Andrea?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Great. I can't believe you did this again. I can't believe you sent that crew on this transfer. It is 5 minutes before shift change. They're going to be gone for 8 hours. I can't believe you continue to do this. You won't address this. You won't take care of our crews. You don't care about our crews. And I just have to tell you, I won't do it anymore. I'm not going to do it. I'm done.
You won't. So you've made a decision about not delegating transfers?
Absolutely. I will not do it anymore. This is your problem. You need to deal with it. You need to make a decision.
Well, you know, I've arrived at a decision, and I don't appreciate the way you're talking to me. Finally,
you've made a decision. Good.
Yes,
what's your decision?
I have. I'd like you to pack your things. Today is your last day.
That wasn't the decision I was hoping you would make.
Yep, your behavior. Nope.
So what do you guys think? So this might be a style, over exaggerated, hopefully, that we might use when we try to influence someone. So use the chat box. What might we call this style of influence that I just used? I wish I had the Jeopardy music. Do, 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 do.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, jump in. We got all night. We'll wait you out. Oh, confrontational. Yeah. Intimidating? You bet. Spelling doesn't count. Non-productive, authoritative. Yeah, definitely non-productive. Seems like more speaking out of frustration. Yeah, I didn't separate the stimulus and the response. Probably been there, done that. I appreciate some self-disclosure. Lack of executive leadership and understanding power. Yeah, so there's maybe a part for her, but we'll talk about the role of assigning blame. I'm not saying that Thomas was assigning blame. Power struggle, bullying, argumentative. Yeah. So we call that style activists, because I was advocating for something, transfers, but a threat, activist threat. I get in her face, all of the things that you guys mentioned, whether she knows about transfers or not. So I wonder, again, using the chat box, would Andrea be influenced by me based on the style that I used? What do you guys think? Yes? No? Thumbs up? Thumbs down? No? No?
Well, and I could play devil's advocate here and say maybe a weak leader that wants to be liked or is afraid of something might be influenced by this.
Yeah,
but would trust be achieved? You know, we're going to talk about trust tonight. You know, would I trust that person?
Yeah, and as Andrea mentioned, I could back her into a corner. Let's imagine it's a regulatory issue. It's an OSHA issue. It's a rules and regulations that she's not following through and our boss. And I could basically back her into a corner and say, you know, if you don't begin to enforce the mask mandate that our governor has put in effect here in Michigan, this is not happening at the crew quarters. It's not happening at the bases. I know you know about it. I feel like I wouldn't have any choice but to, you know, use the appropriate routes to communicate that. She may say, you're right. Yep, I've got to do it. But the result is, do you suppose if I back her into a corner, even if I'm right, like a whistleblower example, will she trust me in the future? Will I have influence over her in the future? What do you guys think? I'm just looking over it. Absolutely not. Nope. And as you can imagine, I'm sure you're all going to feel the same. So here's one of the first critical lessons of influence. You got to let go of judgment, and you got to let go of blame. Now let's imagine that example of the face coverings. If that's the current expectations and the rules, she should be doing it. But if I want to influence her, I'm going to have to let go of, she didn't do it, she didn't listen, she didn't understand, she's not on the truck anymore, she doesn't show up at the bases. Got to let go of all of that because it doesn't matter. My goal is to influence her, to do the right thing, to make the right decision, to listen to me, to hear me out. What got us here doesn't matter. So it's not, I'm vindicated. I just need to accept that if I need to do that, if I have to be the whistleblower, then so be it. But just accept that there likely won't be influence in that relationship in the future.
Well, and wouldn't you say if you're feeling that emotional, at least for me, I mean, haven't you ever just made yourself take a step back and take like a day or something to kind of sort through it before you approach something like that emotionally charged?
Yeah, we'll certainly talk about that when we kind of put it into context with the pyramid, but it's one of the keys that you're mentioning, Andrea, that's so important. And Covey and many others talk about it, but Stephen Covey really said it well, which is you must separate the stimulus from the response. And I'm sure we've all done it. I certainly have. You fired off the email, you called the person up, you sent the text. And so now you're simply having the emotional response, not necessarily being influential. So just wanted to peek at what Sarah said. It depends on how it's accomplished, because they could respect the fact that you're coming to them in a respectful manner. Completely agree. When you come in the right way, and we'll talk a bunch about that, it not only can be influential, it will likely build your influence with that person. So thanks for that kind of spoiler alert, Sarah. You're absolutely on the right track. But folks, I can do better. I know I can do better. I can be better at influence. So let me try to demonstrate it better. So same scenario, I'm the supervisor. Andrea is my boss, want to influence her about interfacility transfers, especially these last minute ones. Okay, action, as they would say. Hey, boss, do you have a few minutes?
Oh, please don't call me boss, but absolutely.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's a term that you have earned. I mean, I know you're super busy, and you fitting me into your schedule for a few minutes, I so appreciate it. You know, I probably haven't said it enough. I mean, it's an honor to work for you. I mean, your leadership.
Oh, wow.
I mean, honestly, it's breathtaking. I mean,
Wow.
it's one of the privileges of my life to be part of this organization and to work for you. And, you know, there's this one little issue. It's really small.
Okay.
You know what?
What's the issue?
Well, it's transfers. And, you know, I'm sure you've already thought about it. You probably have a plan that I just don't even know about. And again, it's not that big a deal. And just, again, I just so want to thank you for your knowledge and your expertise and the things you do for our industry. And how long are you going to make me do this and keep going?
I know. I'm like, when am I just going to ask the question? So he never got to the point.
So folks, what do you think? What style do we call this one? Oh, suck it up. Okay, and keep it clean. Kissing up. Yeah. I heard that guy take it. Yep. Yep. Check the employee if they're ill. Butt kisser, brown noser. Yeah. I'm not gonna. I read what Lynn wrote. I think we all get it. So, of course, the logical question is, does this one work? And you know, the answer is it could. There might be bosses out there that, unfortunately, this is what motivates them. But you know what? It doesn't stick either. It's not long lasting, either consciously or subconsciously. They know it. And yes, I over exaggerated it. And same way with the first one. over exaggerated but these are the primary ones. And when I talk with people and do a lot of, with a lot of organizations, we just have a retainer relationship and folks call when they need something. What they're often presenting is that they've either used activist, threat, or butt kisser, but obviously not in such a direct kind of way. So neither of them work long-term. Let's see, go too far, you come off, yeah, you come off fake, and they know it. I mean, there's, as Andrew is saying, there's obviously a difference from sincere flattery to obviously the piece that's the butt kissing. Andrea, any thoughts before we jump to the next slide?
No, they got it all. I was just thinking inauthentic, but Andrew summed that up. So
yeah, I'm gonna just pull the curtain here a little bit to get a little bit of the sun glare, so I don't look so pale. I am pale and pasty as a Minnesotan who's been suffering winter. But so if we're going to influence someone, I might suggest a roadmap, an algorithm, a policy, a procedure. We in EMS seem to like that kind of thing. We like our ACLS algorithms. We like our processes. So let me suggest one for influence, a color by the numbers kind of thing. The first is we might have to ask ourselves some tough questions. And one of the first ones might be, am I the problem? Maybe in the past when I've tried to influence the boss, I just bring drama. Oh my God, boss, you can't believe what's going on. Oh, the sky is falling, and oh, the transfers, and oh my goodness, the tragedy. You know, danger, Will Robinson, danger. That's exhausting, right? We've probably experienced that ourselves. It's exhausting. Do I bring crisis with me wherever I go? Got a call today. It's been raining for the last couple of days here in Minnesota. I happen to be the manager on call. We happen to be offsite with the leadership team today, doing just kind of we pause once a quarter, go offsite and just kind of refocus ourselves, make sure we're on the right track. So a crew had a cardiac arrest. That happens. Out in the rain. That happens. Their first in bag sat out in the rain while they worked this arrest inside a vehicle that was in a ditch post-car accident. So they're like, all of our stuff is wet. I mean, it's just wet. We don't know what to do. Everything is wet. And I'm like, okay. What do you think? Oh, I think we should take the whole truck out of service, drive it down to the main location, just have them go through the whole truck, and we'll just take the spare from the main location. They have a spare at their base, so they were already in another truck. Why is that? Well, that way they can dry it out. I'm pretty sure you can dry it out at your base. Most of the stuff inside the bag is in plastic. And you know, just set the stuff out and let it dry. Do a good check on your backup truck, just in case. It should be ready to go. Always good practice. And lay the stuff out to dry. Oh, but drama, it was crisis. It was, I mean, when I got the phone call, I mean, the emotion was like a 25 on a scale to 10. Am I acting like a victim? Woe is me. Boss doesn't understand. Boss is terrible, which might be the case. But if I present that when I try to influence, do I spend 80% of my time talking or 80% of my time listening when I'm interacting with this person I want to influence? Wonderful quote I saw recently from Mark Twain. He said, leadership is a life spent listening when I would have rather been talking. Do my judgments of others cloud my actions? Do my judgments of the person I want to influence cloud my actions? Do I assign blame to them? Do I have some axe to grind? And do I lack executive presence? Can I not communicate without using 4-letter words as punctuation? Do I have bad breath? Is my hair taken care of? Did I brush my teeth? My shirt look decent? Are things buttoned? Do I look like I got shot out of the wrinkle cannon? How do I present myself? Do I present myself in such a way that people want to listen? Or do I present myself in such a way that people don't? I know it sounds tough, to hear that if I want to influence someone else, the first thing I have to do is fix myself? Yeah, it is. And if you want to influence someone you don't like, you don't respect, you think that they don't like you and don't respect you, you have to do even a whole bunch more of this. So first step in our influence algorithm is self-reflection. Next. So our next is to ask ourselves some questions. Let's do homework. So if I want to go in and talk to Andrea, my boss, about transfers, as she pointed out so well, the first thing is, did I separate the stimulus and the response? If I'm angry, if I just got burned, if I just got the crew, that just chewed my ear off, if I have some emotion assigned to this, do I still feel emotional? I often preach the 4-hour rule. Separate things by 4 hours. I don't preach or I don't teach the send yourself an email, because too often you put the person's, because it's front of brain, you put the person's name in the send line and you type this email and you with the things that you won't say to them, and then you hit send. Not that I've done that, because of course I have. Or if it feels good saying it, probably shouldn't say it. So step 1, separate the stimulus from the response. Step 2, do I know what needs to be changed, be different, improved, created, started, or stopped? If I'm going to go in and ask Andrea to never, ever, 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 ever 1,000 times do a transfer again, probably not the case. So we today, in my leadership team, spent part of our day talking about transfers as well. And the first thing we did is we dialed it in. What about transfers? And what we dialed in is a neighboring service is often not doing their transfers and giving them to us because they don't want to burn their crew. So instead, they call us so that they can burn our crew. And you can imagine how offensive that feels to our staff. They don't question that they should do transfers. That is part of we do 80% 911, 20% transfers. They just feel disrespected, as was said earlier. So we got really clear, what about transfers needed to be changed, be different, be improved, created, started, or stopped? There were a couple different things that we needed to address. Which truck was the best truck to take this particular transfers, as it makes sense from a deployment standpoint? How should we do these, especially around shift change? And should we be thinking about staggering shifts? And so we got really clear about it. And if I wanted to go to Andrea, I should get really clear first with that. If I just say, Andrea, transfers need to change, even if she wanted to, she might be thinking, well, what? What specifically? What part? Because it's very nuanced and complex.
Why? Yep.
And do I believe I can change things for the better? The why. Yes, exactly, the why. Because if I don't, no, she won't listen to me. I don't have influence. No one really cares what I have to say. If I bring that attitude and belief, it's going to happen. I mean, we all can tell that story about IVs and IV success rates, those that practice clinically or have practiced clinically. When you look at that vein and go, nope, can't get that one. Can't get that one. But the next day, you put this 16 gauge into this little roly-poly grandma vein that looks like it's got 5 valves in it, and it looks like somebody drew it on with a red, ballpoint pen, but somehow, poof, drop it right in. It's painting away it goes, and you go, where did that come from? Because you didn't think about, could I get it or not? You just said, I'm going to get an IV. Attitude and belief. Am I clear about what needs to be worked on next? So when Andrea says, oh, I hadn't thought about that facet, and she subconsciously gets this belief that Aarron feels confident that this is something that can be done. And she says, wow, that sounds great. We're going to assign that other truck to do those transfers, because the way we're doing it today, 2 trucks have to move to do one thing, and this other truck is busier anyways. She might say, how do you suppose we should roll that out? Is that like we should start right away? Do we need to, implement it? Do we need to communicate it? What do you think that next step is? Direction and priorities. And then lastly, and here again is this kind of reality check, is the likelihood is the boss is going to say, hopefully, wow, that's a great idea. In addition to everything else you're working on and the 5 other things I haven't told you I need you to do, work on that thing too. If you go into it with the expectation that Andrea, my boss, is going to say, Aarron, wow, that is just profound. Best thing I've heard of all year. Clear your schedule. Nothing else. No more shifts you have to work. No more other responsibilities. Clear all of it and do nothing but that. No, right? It doesn't even work that way at home, right? You see something at the house and you go, geez, the person I love and live with, I think we should, boy, it looks, that wall looks a little tough. I think we should probably paint it. Sounds good, honey. When are you going to go get the paint from Menards or Home Depot or wherever you get it from? So first, let's see if we're the problem. Second, let's see if we can get clear about the work that needs to be done. Andrea, anything before we jump to the next slide?
The only thing that popped into mind that I wrote down is when we do self-reflect, checking our ego. Something I learned, especially as a supervisor, is if I'm not going to work every day self-aware and checking myself and improving on something, then I'm probably not doing it right. So there are always mistakes. I've tried working on things as a middle manager and failed. And I've been at work in an ambulance having that conversation with myself in my head going, yeah, you didn't quite do that right, but I'm going to keep working on that and improving on that. So the ego self-check, constantly working on improving. And if you're going to work and you're in a comfort zone and you feel like things are just smooth all the time, they're probably not. There's always something to improve and look at.
Yeah. And I think part of that self-check is also, can I tolerate no?
Yeah.
What's going to happen if my boss tells me no? Do I freak out? Do I go behind their back? Or do I go, I often hear, too often I hear, especially from my soups, that when a crew talks to them about something and they give them the answer no, then the crew says, oh, you didn't listen to me. And when the soup says, oh, why do you feel that way? Well, because you told me no. And if you would have listened, you would have told me yes. So do I carry that? So victim, kind of alluded to this on the, am I the problem? Victim and victimhood is simply when I believe something has happened to me outside of my control and there's nothing that I could possibly do about it. And it's just a place of being defeated, defeatism, powerless, blaming others, no choices. And it's just this negative where it's tough to be around. And don't hear me to say that there aren't really difficult work situations, really difficult bosses, work situations and bosses that aren't ethical, aren't moral, are hostile, are all kinds of bad. Ways that I can't even express with the right words. And we'll talk about those as we get close to wrapping up. But the key point is, if I want to influence someone, I can't bring a victim mentality to it. It will simply be ineffective. And so if you find yourself in that place, or you find yourself that you were the problem, or something, just say on this subject, I can't be influential, or I have to do some other work first. And when I do that work, then I might find myself in the opportunity to be influential.
Yes. And there's always choices. That's something I've learned from mentorship, is that you can get in that victim mode and it might be a really bad situation, and it truly would be, but you always have a choice, and looking for those opportunities and those choices is always a good thing.
Yeah, there's two, there's many great books, two that I would point out. So if anyone is struggling with that, or struggling with something like that or has. The first book, and it's really the classic, is by a gentleman named Viktor Frankl. It's Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor was a Jew in World War II, Germany area, Austria, and was loaded up along with his wife and children and sent to Auschwitz. And he was a physician. And so as they went down the line, and when you went this way, you went to the concentration camp. And if you went this way, you went to the gas chambers and the ovens. He watched his wife and children go this way to the gas chamber. And they kept him because as a physician, they wanted to experiment on him, torture him, and have him explain to them using kind of physician terminology what the torture was doing to him. And so he tells the story in his book about being chained to a wall, being tortured, and realizing that clearly he was powerless to change whether they tortured him or not. And he was often powerless to change how his body responded to the torture. But what he did have power over is how his brain responded. There's similar stories. Senator John McCain during his time in Vietnam as a prisoner of war. There's another F-4 Phantom pilot who was also in the Hanoi Hilton, who played golf in his mind every single day because they couldn't take that away from him. So Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And another individual, really an emerging author, is Brene with a B, so Renee with a B, Brown. And she talks a lot about vulnerability and armored vulnerability. And she has several shorts that just go to YouTube and Brene with a B, Brown shorts. And there's one on blame and there's one on vulnerability, and they're wonderful. And Andrea, you may want to peek at the one about vulnerability as you're thinking about that panel you have coming up. That this piece of how, especially as I'm struggling, how I can be vulnerable in a way that people could help me without, having to tell my life story.
Yeah, thank you. So
the slide that Andrea has up is about how I can expand my influence or my circle of influence, or how I can shrink it. So I often tell the story about travel. So I travel a lot. COVID kind of put that on pause for about a year, but it's back to the races again with travel. So if you just stay on the first slide for just a moment. So when I'm traveling, there's certainly things I'm concerned about, like my flight. Is it going to be on time? Is it not going to be on time? But there's other things I'm not concerned about. I fly Delta because it's a hub out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I'm not concerned about if United's on time. I have no concern about that. I'm not concerned if Southwest is on time. So there are things I'm concerned about. I'm concerned if Delta's on time. So next slide. So within my circle of concern, there are things that I can influence. So I'm just going to ask Andrea for the sake of time. So Andrea, do I have influence over whether or not my flight, say Traverse City coming up when we come in for the second half of the Leadership Academy, will I have influence about whether or not my flight coming in or out of Traverse City will be on time?
No.
No. Huh. But what if I try to influence it? So let's imagine I'm standing in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I get to the gate because they should be boarding shortly. And all of a sudden they say, flight is delayed. There's a mechanical. Oh, mechanical. So I go up to the desk and I ask, hey, what's the mechanical? I'm just curious. Oh, the light in the bathroom's not working. What? We're not flying because my phone has a light on it. I will volunteer. Everybody can use my, and I lose it. I freak out. I start screaming and yelling at the gate agent. Will that make my flight on time?
No.
No. What could it do?
It will decrease your circle of influence because now no one is going to want to help you.
Yeah, and imagine, so as Andrea shows, it shrinks it. So let's imagine they cancel that flight because they can't get it fixed or something. And of course, as we all know, it's not like the next flight just is fully open. So they just pick everybody up and put you on the next flight. So let's imagine now there's 5 seats available on that next flight. Do you suppose Aarron's going to get one of those 5 seats?
Very unlikely.
Very unlikely. But what if instead I go up to the counter, I ask, and she says, it's the bathroom light. Oh, darn. Understand, boy. Or even let's take it a step further. Someone else is the jerk who goes and screams and yells and hollers, and I happen to be standing right behind them. And I tap the person on the shoulder. Excuse me, sir, ma'am. The gate agent can't do anything about this. Well, I don't care. Blah, 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 blah. Excuse me, sir, ma'am. Keep that up. They're probably going to call airport police, and there is actually an airport jail, and it's federal charges. This isn't like a gross misdemeanor kind of thing. Maybe should knock that off. Excuse me, sir, ma'am, you're going to stop now. None of the rest of us are going to tolerate this anymore. Fine. Wave at me with one finger and off they storm away. Now I go up to the desk. I can tell the gate agent is rattled and say, just take a minute. I was just going to ask about the flight. I don't really need anything. If you need to get a hold of me, or when you have a moment, just call me up to the desk. My name's Aarron Reinert. I'm in, 386C middle seat kind of thing. Okay, fine. Thanks. This is a real story. So I go sit down. Sure enough, they fix whatever was wrong with the plane. She doesn't call me up to the desk, and I'm literally back of the bus, middle seat kind of thing. And so I get up to the front, scan my boarding pass, and all of a sudden a piece of paper spits out. When they change your seat, it spits out a new piece of paper with your seat assignment. I look at it. It's 2C.
Oh, so you got like first class or business class?
First class.
Nice.
Yeah. Circle of influence. And so when I stay in my circle of influence, I could not influence this other person. I can influence my behavior. My behavior was I wasn't going to tolerate that. And so when I do that, what happens to my circle of influence? So next slide. Whoop, expands. So I expanded it with this other person. So when I go to Andrea and I get in her face kind of thing, I'm going to shrink it. When I go to Andrea and say, boy, boss, I'm struggling with transfers. And I bet you are too. I know we have to do them. I know they're 80% of our revenue. I just wonder, is there something I could be doing to help? Is there data that I could be gathering? Is there a story that I should be telling the crews? Could I be doing something better with dispatch? What can I do to help you and the organization with transfers? Andrea may say, boy, nothing. I appreciate the offer. I can't think of anything. But I bet you, I hope that when Andrea does want some help, she turns to Aarron. So when I work outside of my circle of influence and I yell at that gate agent because I have no ability to influence that plane flying or not, I shrink it. When I can control what I can control, my actions, my behaviors, the things that live in my circle of influence. Was I in time for tonight's webinar? Am I handling this room environment? Am I trying to stay on time? Did I dress reasonably? Am I talking in a voice that you can hear? I can control those things. And hopefully, if I present myself in a way that you think, gosh, he sounds a little knowledgeable and maybe he has some experience there. I'm interested in maybe listening to what he has to say. Next slide. So for me, all of that comes to here. I'm a person who likes to see it as well as read it. So all of those steps our algorithm is really demonstrated here. So the very first thing, whether it's self-reflecting, whether it's asking those questions, is to ask myself, am I willing to invest in this relationship? Before I go try to influence her to make this change, small or large, on transfers, do I know my boss? or this person I'm trying to influence. I often keep saying boss, doesn't have to be. It could be that crew that works with you. Could be your partner on shift. It could be someone else in the leadership team. It could be someone else in a different department in the organization, another service, the next service over. Have I invested in that relationship? Do I know what makes them tick? Do I know what their goals and objectives are? How their performance is measured? What's their hot buttons? What makes them excited? What just makes them so irritated? It makes them want to rip their hair out. Have I made those investments first? Great friend and colleague who runs actually where I am right now in Woodbury, Minnesota. JB Guyton is the gentleman's name. Runs Woodbury EMS, or a police paramedic system where they have dual roles, and they recently, well, it's been a little while now. Now they have triple roles. They're police, fire, and EMS. So they have those full-time people who do that. They're in little vehicles that can rove around, and then they still use a volunteer force that comes and gets the engine or the ambulance kind of thing. So JB says, when I need something, I don't ask until the third meeting. And I think what he's saying is I use those first interactions to build a relationship before I just go in and say, hey, I need something from you. So if your answer is no, not going to invest. I don't like that person. I don't respect that person. They don't treat me well. They don't respect me. They've done bad things to me. That's okay. But accept that I will not have I will likely not have influence with them. But if I say no.
Oh, go ahead.
What?
Go ahead, sir.
No, please.
I really, so I've struggled with this often, and I just want to kind of pick your brain about this a little bit more. So you're telling us that we need to invest before trust is there. It's not the trust comes first and then the investment. It's the investment and then the trust.
Yeah, great comment and question. So a different version of that is, who goes first?
Yeah.
And my answer is you.
It takes courage, especially if you've been burned quite a bit or you've already had a negative experience. It takes courage.
Yeah, what if you had a whole bunch of negative experiences? Again, it comes back to not the past history with them. And I'm not asking you to forgive, not asking you to forget, not asking you to ignore. I'm simply saying none of that matters. I don't really mean it doesn't matter in our heart and our soul. I mean, it doesn't matter if I want to be influential with them.
Very important.
I'm not asking you to like them, respect them, forgive them, any of that. I'm simply saying, if I want to influence Andrea about transfers, and in the past, she has disrespected me, she's been unfaithful to me, she's torn me down around other people, she sent emails about me that have come back to me, she says all kinds of terrible things on calls, she's undermined me in team meetings, the list goes on, right? She's the worst possible human being ever. Sorry, Andrea. None of that matters when it comes to whether or not I can be influential with her. Okay. So, and again, I'm not asking you to trust them. So while I understand the question, it to me is not germane. What is germane is what the question in itself gets to is who has to go first? And it's you. If you want to influence them, you have to go first. And investment doesn't mean that I'm working to build trust with them. Investment means I'm spending time understanding how they tick.
Okay. Very good.
Great, great. So next is revolution versus evolution. So am I trying to get the answer today, or am I trying to build up the relationship so someplace down the road we can have the tough conversation about transfers? It's really important because if I haven't had many investments and I need her to make a big decision quickly, probably not going to happen. If I have done a lot of investments and I need her to make a quick decision, that could probably happen. But that's where we begin, is if indeed we've made those investments. And then it determines whether or not we can get a quick decision or we need to first kind of lay the foundation. Know yourself. What's your hot buttons? What makes you tick? Why do you care about this issue? What's your past history with them? Have you been unfaithful to them? Have you talked about them behind their back? Have you undermined them? Because if so, that's maybe where we have to start. 3 promises and 3 knowns. I know we're rapidly getting towards our time. The 3 promises are these. If I'm going to work with Andrea, and I literally do this, whether I work for her, she works with me, or we work as partners. Maybe we're both field supervisors just on different shifts, or she's the manager of education and I'm the manager of administration. I will say, Andrea, as we work together, I will make you these 3 promises. And they are these. To the best of my ability, I will never blindside you. I will never undermine you. And I will never embarrass you. And if I do, I will be the first to tell you and I'll own it. Doesn't mean we won't disagree. Doesn't mean we won't disagree with passion. Doesn't mean that I'll always blow sunshine up your orifice. It simply means that as we work together, that's the boundaries for me, for our relationship. And also, I want to spend some time with you so that I can understand the 3 knowns. And they are these. When do I ask your advice about something? When do I ask your permission about something? And when do I just go do it? And I will only know those answers if I've spent time with her, because those answers might be situational. They may be person dependent, day dependent, crew dependent. And we only learn those when we have lots of investments in time. Because one day she may say, yeah, just go do it. But the next day, the same thing, but maybe it's a different crew or involved a board member, or it was one of our communities where we're struggling a little bit. The answer may be completely different. And I'll only know that when I spend time with her. And I think when we do those things, we find ourselves in a place of influence. When we work up the pyramid, we're deepening and strengthening trust. When we're lower on the pyramid, trust is less. So for me, this is the concept of influence in kind of an infographic.
Aarron, the 3 promises again: don't blindside, don't embarrass, and what was the 3rd one again?
Don't undermine.
Undermine, thank you.
Yep, blindside, embarrass, undermine. Thank you. And the 3 knowns were when I should just do it, when I should ask advice, and when I should ask your permission.
Very good.
So how to know when it's not working? So really to just kind of sum this up, when to know that we've reached something that we often call a deal breaker. And don't hear deal breaker like something snaps and I tender my resignation, I salt the ground, I burn the bridge, and off I go. Deal breaker simply is me going, yeah, we got there. I kind of figured we would, but we got there. And I may say to myself, you know what? Still going to do it. Still going to work there. It works for the commute, to the kids' schedules, or I need the income. But the point is, like in Viktor Frankl's discussion, I'm not a victim. I've chosen to stay. I've chosen to work in that environment, knowing it doesn't make the things easier, and it doesn't mean disrespect and chronic not listening and shaming and blaming and not backing me up, that somehow it gets easier. It doesn't. But it simply says, I've chosen because it's best for me to stay. Or deal breaker might be, boy, I should shop around a little bit. Maybe reach out to some of my friends in other services and see what's out there. Maybe this is the perfect excuse I needed to go get that degree. Maybe it's time to hang up the hat on this EMS gig and start that bed and breakfast you've always been thinking about up in the UP or something. But the point is, it's not a snap kind of thing. So here's the thing about deal breakers. You have to know what they are before you hit them, or you'll see them in the rearview mirror. Somehow you'll go, what in the world is going on here? How is this happening? How are they talking to me this way, treating me this way? And you go, oh, this started 6 months ago when the line in the sand was here, but I didn't do or say anything. And then it turned into there, and I did do or say anything, and then it turned into there. So deal breakers are just ones you have to figure out for yourself. The easy ones are, it's immoral, it's unethical, it breaks the law kind of thing. But, what if it's the you know, the leader asks you to do things they wouldn't do. You know, hey, Andrea, you know, toilet in the bathroom's all plugged up and it's running over, and I need you to go clean it up. And she might say, huh, if you noticed it, I'm just curious, is there a reason why you didn't? Oh, I've got important meetings that I have to get to. Really? I would encourage you, don't say that out loud, right? Brain mouth filter. But I mean, that kind of thing. So deal breakers, they're there all the time, and I think we miss them. There are lots of bad bosses and bad relationships in a work setting out there. And we just have to know when we hit them that we then pause and we ask ourselves, am I staying or am I going? Because I'm the only one who can make that decision. So that's a little wrap to whet your appetite about influence, about maybe the algorithm to get there, the infographic of the pyramid of how it might come together, and then lastly, how to know when influence isn't working and it's not because of you. You've done all of those things, but influence still isn't working. And that's that time to pause and say, what comes next for me?
Yeah, I feel like we barely scratched the surface with this webinar. So we'll have to bring some more of this content out as we progress, because this has been great. I know you have another obligation. Do you have just a few minutes, maybe 2-3 minutes? Let's open up the floor. If there's any questions for Aarron, you're welcome to ask them right now. You can type them in the chat box, raise your hand. You're more than welcome to unmic yourself. And just realize there's so much more to this topic. And if you're really curious about this series, because this concludes our 3-part series, you know, the EMS Leadership Academy is going to be offered again beginning in October. There are only 26 seats. And if you want one of those seats, start thinking about this early rather than later and look for that registration. Aarron and his team are going to take you into a deep dive into these topics. And the Academy really, truly is, it can be life-changing. So I highly recommend it. I went through it myself and I've greatly benefited from it. So if there are any questions, please go ahead, type them in the chat box. Thank you for all the positive comments. I'm going to actually take us, Victoria, you can stop us streaming from Facebook, and I am going to stop record. That way, if someone's worried about that, we can get rid of the recording.